I'm disappointed. This should not still be happening to people. For sake, it is 2019. Hey, what's up? Hi, hello. Welcome back. I know you missed me. Today I'm gonna rant, speak some truth into this really annoying thing called a mental health stigma. Here's a disclaimer before I start talking about anything. If talking about mental health or the words anxiety, depression, etc., if that triggers you in any way, I advise you to click off of this video. I promise I make other videos. Might not be a video for you. I will be talking about all of that in here, and so I advise you to click off. Now, let's get into it. Okay, so this is a story time, and the person that told me this story time, let's call him Josh. My friend Josh told me this story just the other day, actually, and he called me up and he said, Savannah, I have a story for you. This is not going to be a fun story. You're going to be very mad, but I need to tell you anyways. So clearly it started off good. Now, this story involves a past supervisor of mine. Let's call her Nancy. And Nancy and I, what I thought, had a pretty good relationship when I worked for the past company that I did, which I won't name because that's just unprofessional. So here's what he tells me. He says that Supervisor Nancy called him into her office. And now my friend Josh took my previous position. So they were talking logistics, whatever. And my name came up in the conversation, naturally. So she says, for no particular reason at all, she says to my friend Josh that I am an unreliable and dramatic staff because I had to call out a few times. It wasn't crazy because of my panic/anxiety attacks and or spouts of depression that I was feeling. And I thought as a supervisor, she would be empathetic towards that. Anyways, let's pause there and let's focus on this word that she decided to use for my panic attacks and spouts of depression was supposed. Now, the word supposed clearly indicates that she does not believe me, which, who cares? I don't care if you believe me, but there's a bigger picture to that. Nancy thought I was making up my panic attacks and my depressive episodes so that I wouldn't have to go to work and make money to pay my bills. So she then goes to explain to my friend Joshua that I'm only 23 and how could I possibly have any trauma to where it's so bad that I have diagnosed mental health issues. And then she goes to explain that my trauma, my unreliable 23-year-old self could not possibly have the kind of trauma that she's had in her life, and she turned out perfectly normal. Okay, let's stop again. So apparently, my clinically diagnosed anxiety disorder and depression could not possibly be real because I'm only 23 And her trauma is clearly worse than mine. So yeah, we need a little psychology lesson here. Let's do that. Traumatic experiences. Let's talk about trauma, okay? Trauma affects individual people individually, okay? Let's just start there. What is traumatic to one person may not be traumatic to another. Let's dive into an example, shall we? So, for example, let's say me as a little girl, I'm riding my bike and I fall off of my bike and I scrape my knee. Let's say I get so freaked out and traumatized by this experience, I don't ride my bike for another year or so. Now, let's say my neighbor friend, she's riding her bike and she falls off and gets the same, if not worse, scrape somewhere on her body, and she gets back up, gets on her bike, and forgets about the whole thing. Trauma cannot be measured, so therefore it should not be comparable. Let me say that one more time for the people way far in the back there. Trauma cannot be measured, therefore it should not be compared to anyone else's trauma. No two people's trauma should ever be compared because you cannot measure it. Okay? Okay. Another point. The age limit little point that Nancy likes to point out, that I'm only 23. There are no age limits to mental health. Let's look at the facts here, okay? Statistically, 1 in 5 U.S. adults live with some sort of mental health issue or mental illness in their lifetime, okay? That's approximately 46.6 million people that suffer with these diagnoses or health problems, okay? Now, when it says U.S. adults, it's talking about 18-year-olds and up, okay? Let me just repeat that one more time. 18-year-olds and up. Statistically speaking, 18 to 25-year-olds have the highest prevalence of mental health illness compared to 26 and up. So anyone from 26, 27 years old and up has lower rates of mental illness diagnoses than 18 to 25-year-olds. Now, let me just point out to you, I'm 23, so therefore, I fall into the 18 to 25 range. Nancy is 50-some years old, okay, so she falls into the 26 and up area. Now, I don't want to say that younger people have it harder than older people. That's not the point of this. The point that I'm trying to get across is that it is wrong, it is ignorant to think that younger people cannot have these mental health issues in this day and age than older adults. Yes, can an older woman or an older man go through something much more traumatic in their life than in my life and not have a mental health diagnosis? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that does not mean that those people, or anyone for that matter, can disregard somebody's mental health issues, diagnosis, whatever, just because they're not going through it or they don't believe it exists. That's not right. It's not right to do that. It is not accurate. Just because I'm 23 doesn't mean that I don't have trauma in my life or I haven't experienced trauma. I don't think that it's right to speak that kind of a truth. You know, her truth is clearly different than mine, but I don't think that it's right for her as a person in a position of power, in a person in a position of, you know, where she can be a role model to people. I don't think it's right for her to speak that truth to younger individuals who may be going through the same things that I'm going through, or through things that they might not know what's going on and they're still trying to figure it out. I don't think it's right, because it then creates this stigma that mental health is not real and that it's just all made up in our heads. So I don't want to make this a super long video. I just wanted this to be very precise. It was a little short story time, a little rant, a little truth speaking. But there are a few ending points that I really, really, really want to make sure that you understand through this video. There should never be a reason to compare or measure an individual's trauma besides your own, because you may cope with trauma differently than another person does. So therefore, it is not measurable, it cannot be measured, and it cannot be compared. Just because someone looks normal on the outside or looks younger than you does not mean that they are making it up or they are fabricating this diagnosis to become an attention-seeking person. Mental illness is not to create or attract attention to an individual. I would not have been in therapy for years just to attract attention. That just it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So please do not assume that somebody is making something up. Just because you don't understand it does not mean that it's not real. Age is never a factor when it comes to disregarding someone's mental health or mental diagnosis. Just because somebody is 18 or 46, it makes no difference. Their mental health is their mental health. And if they have a diagnosis or they think that there is something more going on than anything, if you do not believe them just because they're younger than you or because they're less experienced than you, you have no right to disregard their mental illness or diagnoses, period. Okay, sorry for the rant, everybody, but I really felt that it was very important to talk about this. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you were intrigued or inspired, I don't know, by this video. Until next time, see you guys.